the Mesozoic age, about 210 millions of years ago, the sockles of the mountains were formed. The best-known massif of the Watzmann has become the landmark of Berchtesgaden. Continental periods and times of sea floods alternated with each other. Liftings and sinkings folded up the Alps. Ice Age glaciers excavated the valleys and left masses of rubble and pebbles. The 9 massifs of Berchtesgaden's Alps mainly consist of Ramsau dolomite and Dachstein limestone. Clockwise, we want to watch them and have a look down to the valley from their tops. Let's begin by talking about the massif of the Hohe Göll. Across the Zinken and Rossfeld, the elevations advance to the east. We are penning to the Kehlstein, its western spur. The road to the Kehlstein begins on the Obersalzberg, which contains an enormous salt mine that is mined by Salzbergwerk Berchtesgaden and Dürnberg near Hallein. The northeastern ridge of the Hohe Göll is called Kehlstein and rather known as the Eagle's Nest. It is one of the 5 high summits surrounding the Berchtesgaden country and offers a splendid view of the mountain scenery. Those who rather have an easy ride than to some hiking may use the bus that starts from the parking lot Hinteregg at the Obersalzberg. The drive leads over one of the most exciting alpine highways up to 5,200 feet above sea level, where the road ends at the Kehlstein parking lot. On his way up, the tourist will be rewarded by a close look at the rugged cliffs of Göll and Brett and by a wide view down to the country. The Kehlstein road is 4 miles long, passes 5 tunnels that have been blasted into the steep and rocky southwest face of the mountain, and ascends 2,330 feet until it ends up in a sharp curve at the top parking lot. From the platform of the Kehlstein parking lot, a narrow footpath winds up to the restaurant 400 feet above. Another way to get into that restaurant is a 400 feet long tunnel into the heart of the mountain, leading to an elevator that takes you right into the restaurant building. The Kehlstein house was built in the years of 1936 to 38. It was then called Tea House or House of Diplomats. A major part of the interior decoration is still a relict of that period. The panorama from the vast hall is simply enchanting, and the view to the picturesque mountains and lovely green pastures will give you a sensation of beauty always to be remembered. A mountain tour from the Kielstein across the Hohe Göll and the Hohe Spread to the Mount Jena is reserved to experienced, well-equipped alpinists. Within 22 minutes, the Jena cableway takes us from the village of Königssee to the station at the top. From there, footpaths invite to walking tours without greater inconvenience. It takes about 30 minutes to walk to the Schneipsteinhaus, about 40 minutes to walk to the Stahlhaus. A harmless walk leads to the top of the Jena at the height of 6,158 feet. From the cross we look over to the Steinernes Meer. The pyramid of the Schönfeldspitze looks quite graceful. In reality, it is a mighty massif of 8,704 feet. The Obersee cannot be seen from here as it lies behind the mountain of Gotzenalm. From the Jena we look down to the lake Königssee. It is emerald green, mysterious and majestic, surrounded with steep walls of rock. This ice-cold lake, developed by tectonic proceedings and glaciers excavations during the last ice age, is about 5 miles long. The widest distance measures about 1 mile. The maximum depth of the lake is 787 feet. In the distance we already see the unmistakable domes of St. Bartholomew, on a peninsula of pebbles that the waters of the Eisbach unremittingly moves into the Königssee. The Watzmann Ostwand, the eastern precipice of the Watzmann, Germany's highest wall of rocks, rises above the surface of the Königssee. The north side of the Watzmann now shows us again the familiar picture of the two unequally high tops that are separated by the Kar. Between the west side of the Watzmann and the Mount Hochkalter lies the Wimbachtal. Across the glen with the beautiful Schleierwasserfälle, the Schleier waterfalls, we reach the magnificent high valley which to the south is limited by the tops of the Palfenhörner. After the Ice Age, the lower part of the valley was filled with a lake that was similar to the Königssee. By flowing down to the valley of Ramsau, its waters excavated the glen. At the foot of the Hochkalter, the village of Ramsau lies in the partially quite narrow valley of the Ramsauer Ache. The picture of the church in front of the Reiteralpe is known all over the world. The footpath from the bridge called Marxenbrücke across the Zauberwald, Wonderwood, to the Hintersee offers a really bewitching walk. The Hintersee is a lovely lake with flat lakesides, a chief attraction for any painter. The Bavarian kings usually went hunting in the forests around the lake. To the east, the woody mountain of Hochkalter mounts up to 8,553 feet. To the south we find the Hirschbichel Valley, and the vertical walls of Reiteralpe tower to the west. With their pillars, sharp edges, and erosion ditches, the Mühlsturzhörner remind us of the Dolomites. Already in the 13th century, an important road led from Salzburg, Berchtesgaden, and the Hintersee across the pass of Hirschbichel to the districts of Pinzgau in Tyrol. That road was enormously important, especially for the salt trade. The Massif of Reiteralpe has numerous peaks and a sunken plateau of great scenic beauty. From the northern spur of the Reiteralpe, we descend to the Wachtal, to the pass of Schwarzbachwacht, the opening between the Reiteralpe and the Lattengebirge, where today one of the most impressive sections of the German Alpine Road leads the motor traffic across Ramsau to Berchtesgaden. A road from Schneizelreuth across the Wachtal to Ramsau and the Hintersee was built already in the 13th century. In 1816, the road was improved on the order of King Maximilian Joseph of Bavaria, and an 18 miles long saltwater pipeline across Schwarzbachwacht, Jettenberg to Reichenhall was installed, so that the formerly so troublesome transports of salt stones became unnecessary. In the northwest of the valley of Berchtesgaden lies the extended Lattengebirge. The Rotofentürme are a typical landmark, also called Nose of Montgelas, but better known as Schlafende Hexe, which means sleeping witch. Abruptly precipitous are the walls to the pass of Hallturm. The long massif of Untersberg, with the Berchtesgadener Hochthron as its highest elevation, 6,473 feet, closes the Berchtesgaden chain of mountains in the north. Below its southern wall we find the quiet plateau of Mariagern. The overwhelming beauty of the landscape is a precious frame for the church of pilgrimage with its often visited miracle-working image. Wolfgang Huber carved it far away from home and brought it to the place of his youth, to Mariagern, in 1666. The Untersberg is one of the most visited mountains of the Berchtesgaden country. With good reasons, it is called the most rewarding viewpoint. The wild waters of the Untersberg, merged in the Almbach, have excavated the glen of Almbach, a deep gorge between the Kneifelspitze and Ettenberg. Before the waters flow to the Berchtesgadener Ache in the valley, they drive the wheels of the marble grindery near the restaurant Kugelmühle, where still today small pieces of Untersberg marble are ground to become plain balls. From Ettenberg we have a breathtaking view to the walls of the Untersberg, which seems to be near at hand. Miles long is the front of the mountain, which numbers most caves in this chain. Innumerable legends have developed about this mighty mountain. The Untersberg men, small fairies, have their residence here, and in a gorgeous ice hall they keep an eye on the sleeping Emperor Charles the Great. The circle of our sightseeing mountain tour comes to an end. Between the Untersberg and the spurs of the Hohe Göll lies the only and formerly most important outlet to the plain of Salzburg, the Pass of Hangendenstein, which today is used as customs clearance for the border traffic between Germany and Austria. This road was used by religious and worldly men, merchants and soldiers, no matter whether peaceful-minded or ill-disposed. It has, above all other openings, been the most fateful road in Berchtesgaden's eventful history. The waters of the mountains surrounding the Berchtesgaden Valley come together in the Berchtesgadener Ache and flow out to the plain, to the rivers of Salzach and Danube, to the Black Sea. When the first palms are being made in Berchtesgaden, one knows that winter is almost over. Even if winter shows its power again on Palm Sunday, the boys of Berchtesgaden, full of pride, carry their colored palms to be consecrated in the Stiftschurch. One feels that spring has to come. In the 7th century, Berchtesgaden was for the first time mentioned in a deed of donation. But we may suppose that the Celts, who carried on mining in the neighboring towns of Hallein and Dürnberg, came to Berchtesgaden at least as visitors. With the foundation of an Augustinian convent, the history of Berchtesgaden began. In 1102, in fulfilling their mother Irmgard's vow, Count Berengar von Sulzbach and his brother Kuno von Horburg founded the little convent Berchtesgaden. The convent was certified by the Pope and then put under Rome's protection. After an originally unsuccessful trial to colonize this, as they called it, wild country, Propst Eberwin, with the help of monks and lay brothers, erected a monastery, and in 1122 the first church could be consecrated. In the course of the centuries, the Stiftschurch, the time-honored minster, often changed its inner and outer image, due to strokes of lightning, annexes and alterations, but it has always been the center, the heart of the district of Berchtesgaden. Many of the 47 Pröpste and Fürstpröpste, of whom Konrad von Schroffenberg was the last one, have their tombs in this church. After the secularization, Berchtesgaden was incorporated by the Grand Duchy of Toscana in 1803 and came to Austria in 1805. In 1810, the old convent came to the young kingdom of Bavaria. The Bavarian rulers liked to be in Berchtesgaden. Above all others, Prince Regent Luitpold, the great patron and benefactor of Berchtesgaden, spent much time hunting here. The former princely residence, the castle, was a temporary residence of the royal family and was finally adjudged to the House of Wittelsbach in 1923. Where today the guest can enjoy silence and recreation in the Kurgarten, there once was the Hofgarten, the garden of the castle. From here one has the most beautiful view to the south side of the castle. The biggest part of the royal castle has been opened to sightseeing. Guided by an expert, the visitor enters the historic rooms in Gothic to Biedermeier style that are equipped with important treasures and works of art. This Neo-Latin lion keeps guard in the Kreuzgang between the Stiftschurch and the castle. The Kreuzgang, finished in the first half of the 13th century, is the oldest building in Berchtesgaden. It is, with the exception of the north side, all intact and preserved in its Romanesque form. Some centuries younger than the member of the same species in the Kreuzgang is the lion above the market well. On the capital of the column, beneath the shield of the lion, we can read the year 1628. In the occasion of Berchtesgaden's 50-year jubilee of the integration to the Kingdom of Bavaria, the well was uncovered in its actual form in 1860. The Hirschenhaus, House of the Stag, at the marketplace, originally called Haus an der Brücken, House at the Bridge, had been built by the burgomaster and merchant Georg Labermeyer in 1594. The present name comes from the restaurant Zum Hirschen, to the stag, which long had been in there. Especially amusing are the frescoes at the west side, the so-called monkey facade. It is considered to be one of the oldest frescoes in Upper Bavaria. The pictured creatures act quite humanly. In 1519, the Franciscan church, also called Our Blessed Lady, was finished as a Gothic hall with two naves under Fürstpropst Gregor Reiner, next to a convent of Augustinian nuns having existed since 1401. In 1695, the Franciscan friars were called to provide for the spiritual needs of the population. The tomb of Anton Adner, a man who became 117 years old, lies in the shadow of the steeple of the Franciscan church. Anton Adner had been a boxmaker by profession who, carrying a rucksack on his back, travelled through the country by knitting socks and dealt especially in Berchtesgaden wooden articles. Among various occupations, the trade in wood plays a special role, and still today, like already in the 16th century, the Berchtesgaden ware is a souvenir or gift taken away to anywhere in the world. The most important good, however, the only real property of the small district was, until the beginning of the tourism, the salt. In 1156, the Emperor Barbarossa in Würzburg gave a salt mining right to the convent of Berchtesgaden that often had to be defended in discussions and fights against greedy neighbors, especially the prince bishops of Salzburg. In the salt mine, salt has been mined uninterruptedly since 1517. In the mid-19th century, the salt mine was released to the tourists' entrance, and since then it has been a special center of attraction for visitors from all over the world. The brine that is won is pumped through an 11.18 miles long pipeline across Hallturm to the Saltern in Reichenhall. We are now standing in a tunnel of the salt mine that was begun in 1760. Its name is Kaiser Franz Zinkwerk. To the left we find the 95 feet long chute. When sliding down, please hold on to the man in front of you and don't try to slow down. In former times, the chutes were installed for the transportation of materials. Now we are in a shut-down zinkwork that was built in 1726. Charts tell the history of salt water and salt exploitations during the past centuries. Here you see the different colors of the salt stones in
Hier
Berchtesgaden.
sehen Sie die verschiedenen Farben des Berchtesgadener Salzgesteins.
The famous water hydraulic pump was constructed by Georg von Reichenbach and put in operation in 1817. For 110 years it has been working without interruption. In the year 1600, the tunnel Senna
Im Jahre
was
1600
constructed.
legte man das Senna-Sinkwerk an. Der See ist 100 Meter lang, 30 Meter breit und
It contains saturated brine of 27% salt content.
20% Salzgehalt. Beim Ausfahren bitte
When leaving,
bleiben und nicht
please sit still and don't bend sidewards. With a hearty shout of Glück auf, we say goodbye to the
mit
salt
einem
mine
herzlichen
of
Glück auf
Berchtesgaden.
verabschieden wir uns vom Salzbergwerk Berchtesgaden.
Pentecost Monday is the anniversary of the miners. According to an old tradition and to precisely adopted forms, the anniversary is celebrated. The guild sign of the Bergmandel is carried along in the procession. With resounding march music, the procession walks to the Stiftschurch, where the picture of the miners' patron, St. Rupertus, is arranged in the sanctuary. Bavarian Baroque enjoyment is also reflected by the celebration processions of the regional clubs and the Christmas rifle clubs. All those processions constitute feasts for the eye and treats for the ears. Every single one of the regional clubs and of the Christmas rifle clubs has its own colorful banner that is waved by the powerful standard bearer. Summer is drawing to an end. Autumn begins to decorate the mountain forests and the valley that has become quieter with burning colors. The Alp farmers begin to prepare for the day when they drive their cows down to the village. Skillful fingers and a lot of flair are necessary for binding the Fuikeln, the cow's adornment for the day. The cows carry them all the way down to their home cowshed. Besides pride, the Alpine herdsmen above all feel gratefulness for their coming home with decorated cows, means that a good summer is over and that none of the cows has come to harm. A strong wind is already blowing around the mountain tops of Berchtesgaden, and sometimes even snow already covers the mountains. The quietest time of the year is not far anymore.